Welcome to Path of Faith, where we strive to uplift and enlighten your spirit, offering solace and wisdom in times of darkness and doubt. Our life is always this equation of who we are with who we would like to be, also a little bit of who we used to be. It's not possible to conjugate the present moment without the combination of all of this. And the conjugation of the future, that time we're not even sure we'll have, depends on the wise articulation of the past we've had with the present we have today. It's this articulation that enables us to take steps, to walk, always believing that God's hand sustains us, but believing in the right way. Whenever I think of God's providence, I think of it as a favor that never ceases to be present in my life, but at the same time, never removes my possibility of doing my part. Because, my people, we have already learned, even psychology, pedagogy teach us that the good educator never gives his disciple the ready lesson. It would be a crime against the disciple to offer him the ready lesson. The master gives the certainty of his presence to remove any doubt, to be able to help, to dissolve what is hindering and harming learning. But at times, the disciple will have to live with his loneliness. The master remains silent and refuses to give the answer we so eagerly seek. Isn't that how life is? There are answers that only God can give us through his silence. That's also God's hand sustaining us. Because sometimes we have the illusion, and this is the result of naive vision. Unfortunately, religious discourse throughout our lives can give us naive visions that God will do everything for us, that God does this, that God does that. We have the right to believe in divine protection, but we are not relieved of the obligation to do our part, because it's a matter of wisdom, of maturity. The Father does this with the Son, the Mother does this with the Son. Love cannot make us think. The love that we know God has for us cannot make us think that He will do everything. I really like this expression. We only have the right to expect the impossible after we have done everything that was possible for us. So yes, God protects us, but He also asks me to do my part in this protection. I pray to God for my life. I ask Him to give me health, but I need to do my part for that health to be a reality in my life, right? The care I have for myself is an expression of this part of mine, of the miracle I need to perform daily. So sometimes I identify God's hand being present in my story, but not holding me as I think He does. Yes, some forsakenness is too important in our human process. It would be very interesting if we learned this from the cradle, but unfortunately not. So it's never too late for us to learn. The unprotected feeling we sometimes feel in life is also God's hand, because those who love sometimes unprotect, so that you are exposed to what you need to live and experience alone. His presence always watching us, always guiding us, because that's very interesting. The more we grow, the more we mature in our experience with God, the greater our capacity to hear and understand His voice in our story. So, God protects me like this, even when He is distant. You know, it's not that He stays distant, it's that we feel that way because of life's situations. The context makes it difficult to perceive that intense presence in our lives. So, that moment of dismay, oh my God, it seems like I'm abandoned by the Lord. No, I'm not. This dismay is part of His protection in our life. Because those who love know very well that love also needs to go through the harsh experience of unprotectedness, because excess love unprotects. Isn't that how it works? When a person is excessively protected, in the end, in contrast to all of this, there is unprotectedness because that person cannot mature. So, they'll be forever naive, forever believing they are in a fairy tale, and life is not a fairy tale. So believing in God's protection doesn't give us the right to think that God will do everything for us, that He will walk for us. No. He will always be strengthening us ahead of these battles we are going to face, but we will be responsible for doing our part. It was like that with Moses. This song quotes Moses, right? It was this hand that helped Moses divide the sea in two. In this passage, there is a great richness that is in Exodus, when Moses is terrified because he took the people out of Egypt and went towards this promised land, promised. You see, it's also a bit protected. The promised land would be reached as a promise that God made to Moses as long as he encouraged himself to take that people out of slavery and cross the difficulties of the desert. You see, anyone who has had the opportunity to go to Israel knows very well what the desert is. You enter that desert to reach a place we don't know where it is, which is only in the heart of a man. As a promise, it's a great difficulty. And the people believed, followed Moses, began to experience the restrictions of the desert, hunger, began to miss the onions, because in Egypt they ate onions. In the time of slavery, onions were the main food. That's why sometimes we use the expression, "Don't keep crying over the onions of Egypt," isn't it? You must have heard that expression when someone advises you to stop lamenting the past. What is lamenting the onions of Egypt? It's saying, "Oh, I was a slave, but I had this food, I had onions to eat, and now I'm free, but I have nothing." Hold on. Give the desert time. Let the desert tell you what it needs to say. Even hunger, restriction, is very important in the human process. We identify all the time that people are spoiled because they lacked nothing. It's terrible when you have a child who has been pampered since childhood, lacked absolutely nothing, and suddenly, in the open field of life, suddenly that person needs to face life's desert, and they don't have enough ammunition to handle it. What do? How do we face the desert? At that moment, when Moses took the people out of slavery and encouraged himself to lead this people through the desert towards the promised land, he also felt fear. He also didn't know what it would be like. That's why, throughout the manifestations of God in that moment of Moses' life, he communicates with God. They are epiphanies, which are these glorious manifestations of God there through simple reality. It's the burning bush, it's the stone that gushes water. Anyway, God talks to Moses, gives him signs that he is on the right path, but doesn't shield him from the unprotectedness that the desert causes him. So unprotected in that desert, materially speaking, he can establish a trust in God that no other comfort had given. You see how interesting it is? How the unprotectedness, the apparent unprotectedness, has a whole reserved care. And behind the scenes there, just like you, who are a father, a mother, create a restriction for your child so that they can mature, isn't it? Sometimes you take something away from your child so that they really feel the lack, so that later they can appreciate it. I repeat, many people go wrong in life because they lack nothing. Then you notice that when there is too much lack, it can also cause an imbalance, a lack of trust in life, in people. Anyway, it's balance that works. When you start educating by providing protection and apparent unprotectedness, where that person will have to face the situation alone, even if you're watching from afar. I faced extremely difficult situations in my life, where it wasn't enough for the other to say, "I'm here." Why? Because they were mine. Even help. Looking to the side, knowing that you have a friend with you, that there is a mother, a father, a brother. But in many moments of our lives, this ordeal is to be lived in solitude. It's when I need to experience this feeling of being unprotected. Just like Moses experienced stepping on the discomforts of the desert. By facing those discomforts, he understood what the human condition is. So I also make this experience. You do. I don't want to spend my life in blissful clouds. I really don't. And that's why, since I was very young, when life was difficult for me, I found something in that discomfort that made me think higher, that made me think beyond. Moses, experiencing the discomfort of the desert, needed to convince those who were with him that that discomfort would be worth it. Oh, but some wanted to go back to slavery. Look how human weakness is very present in our lives at times of discomfort. How many people, let me give you a simple example so you understand. There are people who need to break up with relationships that are terrible, disastrous. That person only brings harm to you, you know that. But you have a bond with them, you have an emotional need, you can't break up with that relationship. So, suddenly you encourage yourself, everything becomes clear to you. This person doesn't do me good. I can't marry this person because if in the time of dating, it's already like this, imagine in my marriage, later in my married life, it will become an even worse hell than it already is. Then you encourage yourself. You're motivated by people around you to break up. Then it's terrible on the day you break up. The suffering is cruel inside you. It seems like you'll never recover, that you only think about that person. Why? Because despite them causing you so much harm, you have a sick little bond with them of emotional dependency. You know they harm you, but you don't know how to live without them. Then you start taking steps. The first week is horrible. You suffer, you cry, you can't listen to the music, you can't smell, you can't see that little thing that they forgot there at your house. All of that is terrible. But suddenly you start taking steps towards liberation. It's as if you were walking towards a place that will only do you good. And a month later, that suffering gets better. 2 months later, that suffering gets better. And suddenly you're not even remembering anymore. Of course, there's still a silent bond there, being dismantled, because emotional dependency, it doesn't die overnight. It's like suffocating a cancer cell with chemotherapy, where you're removing the life from the cancer cell, which is the cell that kills us. Then let's say 3 months later, you meet that person again, and you have that famous relapse. There you go. The castle you were building, the ground you had walked, which had been so difficult, you throw away, and you go back to Egypt. You go back to slavery. You do the same thing that Moses' companions wanted to do, go back to eating the onions, go back to eating the rotten, spoiled food. Then you restart that relationship because it's sick, and you didn't maintain the necessary distance you should have kept. Because when you have that emotional dependency, you have to establish distance, because otherwise you won't heal. You have to stop wanting to know about that person's life, because otherwise you won't heal. You need to stop snooping on their Facebook, because otherwise you won't heal. You need to stop investigating their life. Where were they? What were they doing? You have to cease all points that may make you want to go back to Egypt, because otherwise you'll never be free. Then, 3 months later, you're beautiful and splendid already, killing the cancerous cell. You go give a few more kisses, go back to that horrible dependency, and hell returns to your life. In your first week, it's okay that everything is coming back. Soon, my daughter, you're in a worse hell than you were 3 months ago. That's how it is. When we don't know how to live the discomfort that builds us up, we sabotage ourselves all the time. It's like stopping drinking, stopping smoking. You stop smoking for a year, and you celebrate because you stop putting that carcinogenic toxin in your body, and suddenly you go there and light up a cigarette for no reason. And that addiction comes back as if it were a monster, capable of eating you whole. There you go. All that sacrifice you made in the first days without smoking goes down the drain. Why? All that sacrifice goes down the drain. Why? Because you weren't able to live with the discomfort of renunciation. My people, it's amazing how God's hand assists us like this, making us aware of what we need to break in our lives. These are situations that we need to establish boundaries for, because otherwise, we will never be healed. We will be forever sick in the line of the needy, crying and begging for a little bread of kindness from others, a little bread of affection from others. For God's sake, we were not made for this. We were not made to drag emotionally dependent people around. We were made to love. And love only makes sense in our lives if it builds us up, if it helps us go through the discomfort of the desert. Otherwise, it makes no sense. This pseudo-love, this false love that sometimes we say we feel for each other, that doesn't help us in the discomfort of the desert. I need to live through my deserts. You need to live through yours. And true friends are those who recognize the deserts the other needs to go through and say, that's right. Let's go through this desert because you need it. Now, Apollonia, she's that happy, orderly life. Remember that character? Apollonia, where everything was a game of being content, right? Stop it. Kill that childish instinct that exists within you that makes you afraid of life's discomforts. Life's discomfort is when the well-lived only makes us better. Take off that victim mask that you stick on your face so others will eternally pity you. You're just wasting time in life like this. What nonsense. God holds our hand for us to be able to cross this desert. It's not to keep falling back and going back to eating the onions of Egypt because we felt sorry for ourselves, because we felt sorry for the other. No. The journey is forward. And there comes a moment when Moses stands before God and says, now you solve this situation because I don't know what else to do. They've already built a golden calf in the middle of the road. They've already caused trouble. They're already worshiping other things. So they're not even remembering that the Lord exists. They only don't go back because they're too far away. But they return in another way. They don't return geographically because they were already far from Egypt. They would die on the way. But they didn't return geographically, but they returned emotionally. Because sometimes we've already surpassed the territory of our physical slavery. I've already left prison, but the prison hasn't left me. That's how it works. I've already taken steps towards my freedom, but I haven't achieved my freedom. I haven't decreed the conquest of my freedom. So I remain emotionally attached to my past. It's a passage from St. Paul to the Corinthians where St. Paul safeguards, drawing attention to the need we have to care for the treasure that is faith. He says, but we have this treasure in jars of clay to show that this all-surpassing power is from God and not from us. We are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. We always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body. For we who are alive are always being given over to death for Jesus' sake, so that his life may also be revealed in our mortal body. So then, death is at work in us, but life is at work in you. This treasure we carry is in jars of clay. When we speak here initially that our faith doesn't always have the maturity to understand this partnership between God and humanity, or even to realize that in this partnership, the primacy is always of divine grace. St. Augustine said that we are not capable of doing good unless good had first been given to us. So you see, what I do because God has already done it in me. God only asked for what he's already given us. Look at how interesting this is. If he asked me to love, it's because he has already given me love before. If he asked me to be good, it's because he has already given me goodness before. It's the corroboration of this word. I cannot be by myself. It is always God who sustains me, who helps me. And that's why I need to identify in the daily life of my life, how can I live this partnership without pretending to be his advisor, to keep telling him, because the advisor is like that. I know because I have an advisor in my daily life, and I know how it works. Sometimes I'm there, ready to receive so-and-so, the advisor comes, his name, blah, 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 so that I can greet so-and-so when he arrives, already with the information. So it's that quick information. I'm in the van, and the girl is already talking. Father, the event is such, talking about such and such who will receive us. It's Bishop so-and-so, I don't know what, blah, blah, blah. The priest will be there, this and that, so that I know who the people are. Sometimes we want to do the same thing with God. We think we're his advisor, that we're going to tell him all the news of the world. It's like that prayer we sometimes see out there, isn't it? Oh, Lord, look at him, how sad he is. Heal him, Jesus. Isn't that right? As if he were not able to know what needs to be done, as if the wisest one in the story were me. You see, Lord, she's very upset with life. Come on, Jesus, fix this in her life. Folks, our prayer cannot have that load of arrogance. You know why? Because it doesn't mature us. Lord, we present the person. We present their reality. We believe in your love. We believe in your goodness. That's it. We become more humble in prayer, And then we'll also allow that prayer to clarify within us what we need to do for the miracle to come true. Because it's very convenient, isn't it? To believe in a Nestor God who is always at your disposal, ready to do everything you ask, the way you ask, and in the order you ask. And woe betide him if he doesn't do it the way you ask, when you ask. No, it can't be like that. Our faith has to give us the confidence that he does what really needs to be done, and that sometimes we don't even know. We're so limited that sometimes we think what God needs to do is move this thing from here to there. And we're convinced of that, when in fact, we might be very mistaken. No, God doesn't have to move this thing from here. He just has to drag it over here. And sometimes it takes us a while to realize that what we were asking for wasn't honest. And then God did everything the way we didn't want it. And we realized that it really was the best way to solve that situation. That's why faith should always give us the maturity of silence, of surrender. The other day I was talking about this with a friend of mine who was very upset about a situation she was going through. And I noticed this anxiety due to the excess of requests, the excess of pleas, and of course, I respected it. I'm not in her. I'm not feeling the pain she feels. I'm not experiencing the despair she experiences. Oh, but if my opinion is asked, I don't miss the opportunity. Don't you think you should withdraw more, ask less? You've already asked. You know so closely the mercy of God. Why doubt it now? Because if I ask too much for the same thing, it's as if I were showing it to myself, not to him, folks. Prayer. We need to scale. It's what it does to us. If I ask too much for the same thing, I can generate within me a silent disbelief, or then a belief that God only answers when we insist. Insistence is not to change what he thinks. Insistence must be, if it exists. And then we have to change the words. We have to stop asking him. We have to ask for ourselves. It's for our nature to be enlightened by ours, so that we can identify what needs to be transformed in us. Because if I insist too much on asking God to do this, to do that, every day I ask the same thing. Every day I ask the same thing. I'm considering that he is not capable of keeping in his heart what I have already surrendered. I wish that in your struggles, you always have the right and the possibility to withdraw your excesses so that you can have before your eyes your fundamental truth, without exaggeration, just you. And from that, you rediscover the path of life. Thank you for your kindness, for your attention, and may God bless you greatly. May God pour out on your heart, on your home, on your life, the disposition that characterized the heart of Our Lady, so that in her example, we too can be true Christians, always carrying Jesus in our arms to present him to those who do not yet know him. If something is bothering me, the first thing, what can I do to reduce this concern? Is there something concrete I can do? So, you have a pain, a betrayal. Have you already gone to the trader to return his garbage? Do you have something stuck, something you need to resolve within your heart, throw away, through words, a cry, I don't know, some action of yours that can diminish this feeling of discomfort? We need to do it. It's the same with concern. When something worries me and I discover in that concern what I can do to diminish the effect of that concern on my life, and I do it, then I start to open the doors for that past to start to pass. Because otherwise, we'll dam up the experience that wasn't worth it. We'll hold within us the event, the happening that hurt us, that injured us, and then we'll live a continuous process of injuries and wounds. Because the memory, the resentment, the bitterness, they only provoke new wounds within us. I've never seen anyone healed by holding on to resentment. What is resentment? To resent. It's feeling several times. It's as if you took a razor blade and kept passing it over the same spot on your skin. It will never heal, and the cut gets worse. Because you keep damaging the skin, keep damaging. You're losing the opportunity to live the healing. Isn't that so? Have you noticed that when it starts to heal, it gets a little itchy? Isn't that so? Healing causes an itching sensation, right? It's the same inside us. You can observe there are many effective situations that sometimes we are starting to recover from them. Then you have that feeling every now and then of wanting to pick at the scabs of healing. Hold that there. Manage to keep your hatreds under control. Manage to keep your resentments under control. Manage to keep your needs under control. And then you start to experience the liberation process from the negative consequences that that fact has caused you. That's life. Everyone gets hurt. I can't create a dome for myself. You can't create one for you. So every now and then, people will hurt us with words. People will hurt us with actions. Now, you can't allow the word that hurts and the action that hurts to cause wounds in your being and to last longer than they should. It reached your being. It went deep into your life. It went deep into your heart. Start finding a way to heal that. Because once you have a wound in your being, you run the risk of infecting everything. In affections, that's how it works, right? Sometimes something comes, hurts our heart, we lose the disposition for everything. Lose the disposition for studies, lose the disposition for work. Why? This has an impact. It affects us. Now, the time it will take for what affects you needs to be managed by you. After all, it's your being at stake, right? And suddenly you start doing everything wrong because your being is hurt. So there's always a little wound there in your being that needs to be cared for. My people, this is an exercise for every day. You see, living the experience of being with Jesus is managing within us all these healings that we need to experience so that we become like Jesus. I want to be like him, but to be like him, I need to heal many things that are wrong in my being. I need every now and then to visit my past, to understand the present. Why am I sometimes arrogant? Was there time in my life when I was humiliated too much. And because I was humiliated too much, I have difficulty managing the moments when someone contests me. No one is by chance. Healing of being happens. When we pray, when I ask God to come and heal my heart, to come and heal my mind, these are expressions we use all the time. But God often heals our heart, heals our mind through our reflection. When you start to put your disordered feelings in order, when you start to regain the harmony that life and events sometimes take away. And that's what I wish for you. That in today's day of your life, of your story, you are committed to healing the wounds of your being. If they hurt you, don't take that with you. Just take it as a lesson for you not to do it to others. But don't let it turn into bitterness, sadness. To be creative, it has to exert within us the movement of overcoming. So, why am I sad? Why am I hurt, upset? I observe that moment. I live that moment as a purpose of overcoming. Because if I don't overcome, I run the risk of turning it into bitterness. And bitterness doesn't do the heart good. A bitter heart can't perceive life. A bitter heart remains focused on the same things. When we focus on the same things, when we don't broaden our view, we run the risk of making our life experience unhappy. Although we are men and women in such different situations, our hearts need the same things. And it's interesting, it seems that time helps us understand what we need. When we are very young, we have a very shallow perception of life. Generally, we tend to put all our efforts into achieving what has a price. Yeah, because if we could, we would buy everything. Isn't that true? And there's no problem working honestly and earning what has a price. But there will come a moment in your life, and the passage of time itself does this to us, when you will understand that what has a price is only good if there is someone by your side to share it with. Then you understand the big difference between what has a price and what has value. You can buy company, it's easy to buy. You just need to have money, finance a party, finance joys, and then you will be surrounded by people. But don't be fooled. You can buy company, but you can't buy a friend. Because friendship is not brought to us by money. Friendship is a conquest. Then you will understand that what has a price, you work to have. What you have, what has value, you need to cultivate. Otherwise, you will never have it. The greatest wealth you can have in life is not in the bank. It's not the house you built. It's not the car you have. The greatest wealth you have is the loves you love. That's what enriches us. When you look to the side and you see that you have won people over, that you have won loyalties, that you have won people who are capable of giving their lives for you. That's value, my people. That's what makes us rich. It's not money that makes us rich. What makes us rich are the loves we love. That's why nothing is more precious than having a family. You understand the meaning of value. How much does your child cost? Priceless. You can even say how much your car costs, how much your bike costs, how much your house costs, but you will never be able to say how much your child costs, because there's no money in the world that can pay for it. A distant cousin might even sell, right? We might even sell if we get a good amount of money, right? A distant, annoying, pestering cousin. But when there is love, no, priceless. Then you understand the true meaning of life, which is to build these bonds that make us eternal. I wish you have someone to love. And when you're really tired, there is still love to start over. To start over. To start over. That's right. Nothing can be more precious than someone who represents in your life a bit of God's love in your story. The people who educate us the most are those who love us in a way similar to how God loves us. Did you know how God's love manifests in your life? Through another love. Because everything God does in us is through a language we understand. We are men and women. It's with the language of men and women that God acts in our lives. He doesn't create a different language, no. He will speak in a way you understand. Because his desire is for you to know him more and more. And the most beautiful thing, where is God? Inside me? Inside you? That's why it's not possible to know God without knowing yourself. They're not two separate paths, one that leads you to God and another that leads you to yourself. It's the same path. The more you know yourself, the more you get to know the God who dwells in your heart. And God manifests himself like that. How does he love me? Through the love of those who love me. through the healthy bonds I can have. The first love we receive in life is the love of our parents, and there was God's love in you, for you. And then, the first source of love is the father and mother, and the people around us. Depending on how it is done, if it is well done, it will leave a reserve in you. You know, like how we need a cistern, an artesian well for us to have a reserve of water. You know what the name of the well, the reserve we need to have is? Self-love. Self-love. It's a very effective way God has of loving you. You know when? When you have self-love. Because if you have self-love, the devil doesn't have much chance in your life. The devil thrives on the lives of those who don't love themselves. Observe. The moments when you allowed bad things to happen to you the most were when you stopped loving yourself, when you stopped respecting yourself. Because that's very natural. If I don't love and respect myself, you won't want to love and respect me either. Sometimes our relationships, we hurt ourselves so much because of this. They're two people who don't love each other trying to love? No. And sometimes we think, oh, you're going to bring me the love I need. No. The love I need, I already have. It's the reserve I've been creating throughout my life. I don't depend on anyone's love to be happy. Of course, when the love of the other comes, it complements the love I have for myself. But I can't wait for you to come and give me what I need to offer myself. That's why it's so difficult to love a person who doesn't love themselves. You know that. It's a lot of work. You can give your best. They'll think it's not enough. A person who doesn't love themselves is always expecting us to do for them what they should have done for themselves a long time ago. When you love yourself, it's easier for you to have a good relationship. When you love yourself, it's easier to be your friend. When you love yourself, it's easier to be your child, your husband, your brother. When you love yourself, the devil might come close, but he can't do anything against you. Because the armor that God placed in your life is not the crucifix you wear on your chest. It's not the medal of Our Lady. It's self-love. Who protects you from the snares of the devil is your self-love, which is where God dwells, which is where God is acting to protect you from all evil. Those who love themselves don't do drugs. Those who love themselves don't get addicted. You can observe the person who loves themselves, who respects themselves. They won't want to get drunk. They won't want to get addicted to anything that can take them away from the center of their decisions. A person who loves themselves won't accept to prostitute themselves. If you want to come into my life, take off your sandals from your feet because this territory is holy. Love yourself. To convert to Jesus is first of all to identify the respect you need to have for yourself. Today, my people, the world is leveling everyone down. What is being offered to you as entertainment is a cause of perdition for many. Our young people are lost in false joy. Our young people are losing joy very easily because they are losing life little by little with what is not difficult. Deplorable environments we call joy. Joy is you having the happiness of being who you are, of striving to become a better person, studying to succeed in life. That's how God wants us, in the right place, being the right person. Sometimes we're the right person, but it's no use being in the wrong place. You have to be the right person in the right place. And then you build what is difficult. Love yourself. I know that sometimes our lives, because of the mistakes we make, we don't forgive ourselves. We undermine our self-love. We throw away our self-love. Sometimes unhealthy relationships, infidelities, spoil our self-love. You forget the value you have. Sometimes you've been mistreated your whole life that you've long forgotten the value you have. Today is a day to remember the value you have. There is no sin in this world that you have committed that takes away from you the fact of being a beloved son and daughter. God loves you. He trades kingdoms. Yesterday's Calvary was for us. Jesus died because he preferred the wretched. Jesus died because he made friendships where we wouldn't. Jesus died so that you and I would have the right to sit at the table with him. He lived in a very exclusive religious moment where religion judged people out by the mistakes they made, not. My people, if we are going to judge people out by the mistakes they make, there won't be anyone left in this square. We're all fragile. We all make mistakes. But there's one thing that doesn't change. God doesn't give up on us. God doesn't give up on me. God doesn't give up on you. Take a look at who's beside you there. Say, your face doesn't help. Tell her, your face doesn't help. Your past condemns you. But today, I have good news for you. God hasn't given up on you. God is able to exchange, open seas, and if necessary, he would give his life for you again. I'm just not able to stop loving you. Sing with me. God leaves peace everywhere. Come to us. Open seas so you can, and if necessary, I'll go, yes. On the line again. Life in the end, I am so unable to stop loving you. We can't change the way we leave home. We can't alter a single inch of what we choose to live with people. We don't mess with the past, but we can change the way we go back home, and from this moment on, find a new way to live and be with those we love. Life is a bullet train. Partner, and we're just passengers. Need to leave. Today is a night of victory, and we can proclaim the victory of Christ over what is now a suffering in your life. Proclaiming Christ's victory over our addictions, over our vices. Proclaiming the victory of the open tomb over our physical, psychological, emotional ailments. Today, the Lord wants to raise up courageous men and women to overcome the battles that life throws at us with courage, with much courage, to win the battles that life puts us through. That's why we came, to be people of courage. Today, a beautiful opportunity for us to sing this. Notice that you are making a commitment with this chorus. You will do your part. I will pursue everything that God has already prepared for me. I will persist. And even in the marks of that pain, I will continue. Because that's how God makes us winners. Putting in us the courage to overcome what needs to be overcome. Doing our part of this miracle. Restoring self-love that is so necessary for us to be ready for our fate. With me. Be with me tonight, a son, a daughter of the resurrection. What is the name above every name? Jesus. The Lord be with you. By the intercession of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Mother of the resurrection, descend upon us, upon our hearts, upon our families, especially today upon our needs, upon everything that God needs to encourage in us for us to overcome, for us to give testimony to the resurrection of Christ. Pour upon us the blessing of Almighty God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. God gives us the nuts, but doesn't crack them. Look how interesting that is. God gives us the nuts, but doesn't crack them. And then, based on that, an author, Paulo Roberto Gefke, wrote the following text. There are many people waiting for the cake to be ready. People who expect more than a miracle. They want angels to become accountants and solve their personal accounting that never balances. They spend more than they earn and live in debt. They want angels to become doctors and cure that cirrhosis from years of alcohol, the lung emphysema from many years of smoking, the chronic diseases from years of poor nutrition, the nervous diseases from lack of self-love. The miracle is there every day, available to those who want to change. Available to those who want to change. It's the sun that provides the work, the rain that promotes the plow, the sea that brings the shoal, the river that fills with fish, the technology that creates jobs, life itself that renews and clearly and concisely says, God gives everything you need. It's a time for motivation, for believing more in yourself, using the energy of the soul, of the heart. Time to take the nuts and crack them with the fruits, make cakes, sweets, and ice creams. Then you invite me to come over and eat the cake with coffee with milk. So many possibilities for the miracle to establish itself, for you to see and feel God. Learn then from this lesson. God is not found in lamentation, nor in complaint. God is found in work, in the sweat of the face, of those who devote themselves to good, who don't have time to speak ill of anyone. People who truly discover that they themselves are a true miracle. Beautiful, isn't it? I'm really in favor of that. Enough of this story of thinking that God will do everything for us. God gives us grace all the time. Grace needs to find the task. God gave us for free. God endowed us with many blessings. Now we need to react to all of this. Besides, my people, it's very sad when you realize that the main problem of a person is laziness. Laziness in every sense of life. There are people who are lazy to improve. There are people who are lazy to make an effort to become better human beings. There are people who are practically lazy to clean dust, lazy to work. They wake up already discouraged. They don't want much effort. They want everything to fall from the sky. The world can only be transformed by courageous people, by people who face themselves every day. The biggest challenge you have in life is to tame yourself. Many times you waste a lot of time trying to tame others, trying to take care of others' lives, but the main purpose you have with life is you. The main place to be tamed is you. The main place to be transformed is you. And where I'm talking to you without listening to this, right? So I also immediately listen that the main place to be transformed is me. That I am the first to take the step and change. That laziness doesn't lead anyone anywhere. Roll up your sleeves, go study, go work, go live with dignity. I'm very afraid when people settle into charity. I'm very afraid when people settle into the charity they receive and stop making the effort for it to have conditions to overcome that moment, to no longer need that charity, so that that charity can be given to someone else who is more in need. The charity we receive, I too. How many times have I been helped? In many moments of our lives, we need help in all aspects. But that moment of being helped is supposed to be transitory. We don't have to spend our whole lives depending on it. That's why we can't stand clingy people. Emotionally needy, right? What is affection? Emotional neediness? It's that person who wants other people's charity all the time, from an affective point of view. Mind you, the love of others is important in our lives, but it's you who have to carry your burdens all the time. Another friend to help us carry life, to carry existence, but you have to deal with your problems, your difficulties. Then, every now and then, you share when it's too heavy, but you don't have the right to establish yourself in laziness, in accommodation, and expect the other to do it for you. And religion that teaches that God does everything is wrong. Honest religion is the one that teaches us that God's grace also needs to find the sweat of our face. Once someone asked Rui Barbosa, the great writer, the great thinker, "What is the secret of your genius, Rui?" Right, I was waiting, thinking, I received good genetics, my father was very intelligent, I'm very capable. Why not? He said, "The secret of my ability is that the sun never surprises me in bed. It means he used to get up early to take care of life." Of course, life has changed. Getting up early doesn't mean much anymore. There are people who work until 3 in the morning so they can't get up early, right? Mauricio, that's your case. I worked almost all night tonight. But getting up early is a metaphor. That is, don't waste time. I'm running after everything I can. Still this week, Leo introduced me to someone. Leo is a person who is responsible for my life, right? All our Natal activities. Leo introduced me to someone, and I was very moved by the story I heard from that person. And then, one of the details, of the many rich details of that person's story, is that the great financial difficulty they go through doesn't prevent that family from dreaming. A woman who completed high school with a lot of effort, with a lot of struggle, a lover of reading. And I found it interesting, beautiful, that this person, she doesn't have the money to buy books. You know what she does? She goes to the bookstore, pretends to look at the books, takes the book there, reads some 5, 6 pages, 10, leaves it there. Then she comes back, takes the same book, reads another 5, 10, because she doesn't have the money to buy the book. But isn't that fantastic, folks? And that moved me so much that I'm going to send her a box of books. It moved me so much because sometimes a person has the book at home, has the money, can buy it, and doesn't have the habit of reading. That creature deprived of so much, materially speaking, but she is not deprived of the essential, which is the will. Will is the greatest wealth a person can have. Because without will, you can give a person a college education, you can give them a house, you can give them a job, but if they don't have the will to live all of that, it will be worthless. It will be worthless to have all that. Now, the person has the restriction, but within her heart, she has this pact with life. She doesn't get discouraged. She makes her daily effort. That's why I don't pity those who make an effort. What I pity is the lazy ones. With those who make an effort, I'm sympathetic, but not with the lazy ones. Help. But the other person also needs to help themselves. They are the first part to make it work. We can't do that. We can't stop people from making this effort. Because sometimes we want to help, but we end up carrying the other person on our backs, assuming their responsibilities. We can't. And this happens in all dimensions of life, including in the affective spiritual dimension. Be very careful, because sometimes we create a state of spiritual laziness in others. They just pass by in the middle of the room. Oh, pray for me, because I need it. Isn't there a type like that who loves it when you put your hand on their head, who prays for them, but they themselves don't make an effort to improve? Oh, you guys need to pray for me, folks, because I'm not well. In these prayer groups, there are many people like that who go there every day and faint and feel sick. Why? They want attention. Or then that affective vampire who always has that look like that. The affective vampire is sad. It sucks all our blood. It grabs onto our jugular. And sometimes it takes time to realize that it was an affective spiritual vampire. It's always begging for our affection, wanting our attention. There is a range of possibilities to do that. Be careful. And sometimes we feed these people. We prevent them from growing. That's why loving is being tough with that person at the right time. I don't hesitate when I need to do that. What about people who want to cling to me and be sticky with me? Why? Because they think I have the solution to their problems. That's why you have to be very careful with those who think you are too necessary. Be careful. If the person thinks you are too necessary for them, be careful. You have to have balance. Even in friendship, isn't it? Even in marriage. Okay, if you're okay, I'm okay. Oh, I don't know. Well, if you want to be okay, then there's that thing. It seems like conjugal love is very beautiful. Conjugal love needs to be lived all the time in that sharing. But personal lives need to continue the same way. You need to continue to have your own will. You need to continue to be in charge of yourself so you can give yourself more quality to the other. Love isn't this clingy thing that often suffocates. It can't be. That's why sometimes a harsh word is the best expression of love for that person. Grow up, mature, open your eyes, stop it. Stop being a vampire. Go live your life. No, I don't have the solution to your problems. Now, when the other person doesn't want to grow, they're going to play this game their whole life. They stop doing it with you and start doing it with someone else. And they keep sticking to you. It's like a gecko. It sticks where it can. This can't happen. It shouldn't be like this. Life needs to go through our disposition, through our courage and consciousness all the time. I need to be aware of what my limitations are, what my possibilities are, and act responsibly with all of that. Father, I wanted you to help me deal with the feelings I'm experiencing. I lost my husband and also recently lost my son, and I'm having trouble coping with the grief. You would say, it's not easy indeed, my daughter. Losing two people who are so important in your life, it's like the structure of your home has somehow collapsed. And it takes time. The heart needs time. We cannot expect healing today if we need to go through the process that will result in healing. And grief, it's a process. What is a process? That it naturally needs to go through a process. When someone dies within our home, my people, the structure is completely changed. It's impressive how one person, if you remove just one person, it's impressive how the family structure is modified. And it's like a moving truck whose pumpkins in the back rearrange themselves as we hit the road. It's a rural language that I've seen a lot. Fill the truck with pumpkins, hit the road, they start shaking, making noise. Suddenly they settle down and you don't even remember that you had all those pumpkins behind. But until they settle, it makes a lot of noise. That's how it happens in our lives. Whenever someone is taken away, the truck makes noise. And we think that noise will be eternal. I remember the death of my sister when Heloisa died. It was so traumatic at home. It was so difficult to restore the house without her presence, even though she didn't live with us anymore. She lived in Belo Horizonte at the time, but you have to restructure your heart because the other person lives within us. Family is not just the place where people live in the same house. Family is when people live within each other. And when someone dies, we lose that tenant. You lose that presence that was within you. Of course, the longing will remain, but you don't embrace anymore. You don't find, you don't talk. So this organization of mourning, it will need to go through the process of getting used to the absence. And in your case, Jose, you are still going through the harsh experience of losing two people in a very recent period. My daughter, you will have to have a lot of patience with your feelings. This won't change overnight. You will have to accommodate these two people in your longing, in your feelings, so that you can continue your life as it was before. Of course, it will never be the same, because it can't. It's not for those who haven't lost either. Life is not the same. Life can never be the same, even for those who haven't lost. Life is always in motion. Just the other day, a friend of mine found out her son was ill. She was devastated. The same illness her husband had, which was extremely painful for them, she found out her son had too. What to say? Of course, we say, I'm with you, I'm praying with you, but that's a dilemma she will need to face. No matter how much I love her, I cannot enter her heart and live that suffering for her. I even took her in all the intentions of my masses during the pilgrimage. And I asked Our Lady in a special way, since we were in Marian territories, that Our Lady would do in her heart what God did in your heart when accompanying the agony of your son. The boy's illness is not a death sentence, but it touches on hardship. It touches on suffering. We don't want our children to be ill. After the news, which at first seems like the end of the world, then because we are people of faith, our process is to rebuild reality, and we come out of it even better. So, we can never want life as it was before. That's something for children. That's an illusion. Life will never be the same for those who have lost and for those who haven't. We need to adapt to the movements that time has made, always in the daily effort to put soul into our body, to give meaning to our life, to never allow difficulties, losses to prevail over all of this. Now, my daughter, as time goes by, we mature with the event. When God has the opportunity to act in our lives in these moments of pain, it's amazing how we are changed for the better. And this is possible, yes, not only because it happened in my life, but because it happened in the lives of thousands of people who give wonderful testimonies of overcoming, who help us understand the pedagogical dimension of pain, of suffering. It's the proof before our eyes of many people who have also gone through the harsh experience of losing children, husbands, mothers, siblings, boyfriends, girlfriends, spouses, and after continuing existence. Now, patience with the process is important. I cannot anticipate this healing. It's like the healing process. A friend of mine, Adelina, my travel companion from Fortaleza, spontaneous all the time. That's why I liked her from the first time I saw her. She wears her heart on her sleeve. And then, after one of my preachings during the pilgrimage, she gave me a little note with just one sentence like this: "What doesn't inflame cannot be cured." Inflammation is the body's first movement to be healed in what has been hurt. So, inflammation is a manifestation of the body's own immunity, wanting to expel what is attacking the flesh. And it is indeed. A simple little sentence made me remember that sometimes when we were kids, we'd get a thorn in us. That thorn hurt. Hurt for 2-3 days until it turned yellow, and then the secretion itself would work to expel that relief. We squeezed it, it all came out, that ugly thing. The thorn came out, and that's it. The body was there, without pain. It's like that nasty pimple on your face. It hurts, 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 hurts. And you go there, do everything wrong, give it a squeeze. Isn't it, Christian? Almost breaks the mirror. Relief. Dermatologists shouldn't even hear us talking. They can't know that we do that, no. But when you have that inflamed thing, when you go there, give it a prick like this. After the inflammation is the movement of healing. In our hearts, when we lose someone, we are inflamed with pain. And if we allow that inflammation to go through the natural process of expelling, of throwing away what is infected in us, our future will not be like before. I repeat, even for those who haven't lost, it's not the same, but we can make that future worth it. I am a very sad person. Besides this married talk, when I got married, with 1 year of marriage, I lost my first child. Then I went through a lot of sadness. Because of that, I spent over a year with a lot of depression, a lot of sadness. Then other children came, 4 daughters came. I raised them all well. When it was this year, which ended yesterday, from January 11th, I lost Vida's grandson to drowning, right, at 4.5 years old. This father has greatly affected my life. I was very sad, very shaken, very shocked. I almost died. Even today, I carry this sadness within me. I really wanted to live this, Father. This child has stirred me deeply. It was like this. It was worse than my son's case. It was much worse because it was like this. My son's death was sudden because he drank a porridge and then he didn't choke. But the porridge he drank was ingested into his lungs. And my grandson's death was a drowning death, a death that I found very sudden, very abrupt, so I couldn't accept this. Then I became a person against God, full of anger, full of resentment, of sadness, of revolt. You know, Father, I used to be a very godly person, very prayerful. Then I blamed myself a lot. Why? Why did I blame myself? Because I thought I had prayed too little, blamed the person, blamed God. I thought God should have gone there and taken him out of that water, saved my grandson. So, Father, it was so hard. We made it 4.5 years. It was very hard for me. It's still very hard, asking God to help me, to enlighten me from yesterday to today, for me to get rid of this sadness, this anguish. It's a very heavy burden on my shoulders. This sadness, this anguish comes and goes. For me, it's a very, very heavy burden. I need to get better from this because I can't go on like this, because otherwise I won't resist, Father. I won't die of sadness, of suffering, and I can't go on like this. And there you go. Now I want you to call me. What should I do, Father? FG. Mrs. Maria, the first thing that is very beautiful already to identify in you is the desire to change. Every time we are faced with an event that traumatizes us, that takes the ground from under us, because an event like this takes our ground, an innocent, a person we love, dead there. I'm remembering Mother. Our friend from Sergipe also, who went through the same experience, and she took her son out of the water. She was the one who took him out, a dead boy. I heard this story, and I had the opportunity to be with this woman, who is the mother of this boy, on the banks of the Jordan River when we went to the Holy Land. And I remember that when I baptized her, the word that came to me was this. I poured the water from the Jordan River over her head, and I said to her like this, take your son out of the water once and for all. Because from the time of the boy's life, of the boy's death, until that day, she was keeping the boy drowned. She didn't take him out of the pool because she only lived around that. She didn't do anything else. She lived all the time the experience of drowning. It's that old story, right, folks? The event is there, and I can't detach from it. So, no matter how long it has been, the boy is still drowned, the boy is still in the water. Before that word, she decided to react. And it was very beautiful to hear this from them. Father, we are very grateful that that word helped my sister to continue her life. Mrs. Maria Duzzy, I wish I could take this pain out of your heart, but maybe you can also start taking your grandson out of the water. Don't keep him drowned anymore. Don't put your thoughts anymore. Don't fix your idea, your story in his drowning. First thing, remove the guilt. There's no need to find blame for such a tragic story. Even if you find out who's to blame, it won't bring the boy back. It won't solve our pain. No. What we need to do now is to continue life from what we have. We can't take the boy out of there anymore. We can't resurrect him anymore. And we can't bring him back to life. There was no time to do anything, but now there's a beautiful way to make resurrection happen. Restoring life in the family, bringing the joy back. Because we all are deprived, Mrs. Maria Dulce. When we have someone at home who cannot live through the process of loss, all of us around are harmed. We are harmed. And it's beautiful for you to say, I don't want to be bitter. I don't want to be a sad person. This reaction is already God's action in you. The time of revolt, it's part of life. We are human. We are fragile. We will revolt. We will scream. We will blaspheme. But this has to be temporary. Screaming and blasphemy don't heal our hearts. No. What heals our hearts is the prayer of surrender. And this must be your prayer, your daughter's prayer. Lord, I cannot change the death of my grandson, so I want to entrust him to you. I want you to take care of him and remove this guilt from us. Grant us the grace to continue living without needing to find someone to blame for this tragedy. Entrusting to God does not mean we alienate ourselves. No, we only entrust to God what cannot be fixed anymore, because the rest we do, we run after because He is helping us to achieve it. But what cannot be fixed anymore, leave it in His hands. Remove that weight from you. You are trying to solve the problem, and there's no way to solve this problem. There's no way to bring this boy back. So today, removing him definitely from the waters is to accept that death happened, but that now we want to continue life, qualifying our daily lives, our history, preparing our future in a more beautiful way. Entrust this dear grandson of yours to the Lord and see him as an intercessor praying for you. He is a legitimate representative in the heaven, a legitimate representative of the family who is in heaven without suffering. There's nothing bad, only us here who need to deal with this pain. As we conclude this spiritual exploration on Path of Faith, we invite you to engage with us by leaving your comments, liking this video, sharing it with others, and subscribing to our channel for regular doses of uplifting messages.